Hello everyone, welcome to Innovative Approaches C. Thanks for joining us. My name is Lauren McIntyre and I'm the technical manager for this session, and the chair will be Umi Famide. Thank you for taking part in ANH Academy Week. Looking forward to a really robust session today. Quick reminder that if you need access to conference materials, the programme can be found on the ANH Academy website at anh-academy.org/ANH2020. Before Umi takes the conversation forward, I just have a few technical announcements. So this session is recorded and will be posted on the ANH Academy website following the conference. All participants have been muted, but please introduce yourselves using the chat function. Let us know your name and where you're coming from. And you can access the chat box by clicking the chat button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Please share the webcam video if you feel comfortable or you have strong bandwidth, but if you prefer not to, you can put a profile picture instead by right-clicking on your name in the Zoom window. If your connection gets patchy, we recommend turning off your video. Later in the session, we'll open up the conversation with a Q&A. So if you have questions, please share them in the chat box during the session and we'll do our best to raise them at the end. If we have time, we may also ask participants to raise their hands so we can call on you to ask your question aloud. If you have any technical issues, please check your audio settings and your internet connection. You can always try to reconnect the session using the same Zoom link. And if you have any technical questions, please send me a direct message using the chat box. Thanks so much, and over to you, Umi.
Thank you, Lauren, for the kind introduction and explanation about the sessions. Welcome again, everyone, to the Innovative Approaches C of this ANH Academy 2020. I'm Umi Fahmida from the Regional Center for Food and Nutrition of the Southeast Asian Minister of Education Organizations at Universitas Indonesia in Jakarta. I will be chairing for the sessions, and it is my pleasure that today we will have the three nice presentations related to my interest. I'm a nutritionist by background, and also having a background related to agriculture technology. And in these sessions, we have three presenters basically to share about the innovative approaches. I can say it in one sentence. It is AHA wish for Safira. So the first one, we will have the presentations about the sensitization, how it works for the agriculture nutrition. And also we will listen to the index of health and sustainability. And also we will be hearing about how approaches and methods can help for planning the food-based interventions. So every speaker will be given 3 minutes time for presentations, and we will be following the order as in the announcements. The first one, I'm glad to introduce Gabriela Chutsi-Piri from the Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources. She is the senior lecturer, and she will be sharing with us on intensive sensitizations for the community-based research. Gabriela, over to you.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Gabriela, please unmute yourself. We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so you said it's for how many minutes? I didn't get that clearly.
3 minutes, Gabriela.
Okay, just. So I need to share the screen?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Gabriela, I think you are still muted. Or if it will be more problem to share the screen and you wish to just present, it's also fine.
Perhaps we move on to the next speaker and we could try to come back to Gabriela at the end.
Yeah, okay, I think
Thank you.
do that, yeah, Lauren. So I think while Gabriela may be taking care of the technical things, shall we move to the second presenter? We have already Laura Treisberg, I hope I spell it correctly, from the Wageningen University of the Netherlands, very familiar name for me. And it is a very interesting index he will be sharing with us on the development and evaluation of the WIS diet index for assessing a healthy and sustainable diet. Laura, time is yours.
Thank you, Umi, for the introduction. I will share my screen. Can you all see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. So my name is Laura Treisberg. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Wageningen University, and together with a team, I worked on developing the WISH index. And this World Index Sustainability and Health, the WISH index, we actually came up with it because we saw a need for an index which combines measuring sustainability and the healthiness of the diet, and preferably in a more how do you say it, easy way, because there are such kind of indices, but they are using LCA data and need data from fruit composition tables, and not all countries have such extended data. So our intention was to come up with an index which is relatively simple to measure both sustainability and health in one go. And the index is based on the Eat Lancet technical recommendations, and 13 components, 13 food groups are scored. And the scoring of such a food group is based on the diet quality, the healthiness of the diet, and the environmental sustainability. And these components are added up in one total score. And we also developed subscores, two subscores, the healthy and unhealthy score, measuring the healthiness of the diet, and two scores, the high environmental impact and the low environmental impact score, measuring the sustainability. I did an initial evaluation, and this evaluation was done in a Vietnamese population using 24-hour recall data. And we concluded that this Sustainable Diet Quality Index seeks to measure two complex multidimensional concepts: diet quality, or the healthiness of the diet, and the environmental sustainability. And both concepts are closely related. Healthy diet shows a strong correlation with environmental sustainable diets. However, a diluting effect of capturing these both dimensions in one scoring system is expected, and that's also what we saw a bit. So further validation or evaluation of this WISH index is needed, and that's also what I'm working on. And I want to also thank everybody who helped or who worked on the development of this index. So thank you all, and I'm looking forward to the questions and answer round. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thank you, Laura, for sharing. I think for most of you, I hope you have seen also the video that in that video, Laura has shared more details about the index, the WIS index, the World Index for the Sustainability and Health. So please post your questions for our QA sessions. Make sure it is sent to everyone. So we will combine the discussions later after all the 3 presentations. And we shall move to the second presentations from John Snow International. Sarah McClung will be represented by Ashley Ekison, and she will be presenting about the use of unexpected tools to advance understanding of the role of market to improve young child nutrition through egg consumptions. Ashley, over to you.
Good morning or afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. I'm Ashley Akison. I'm a nutritional anthropologist and a social and behavior change practitioner. And I've been working for about 20 years to integrate nutrition into food security, agriculture, and livelihood projects, and to integrate social and behavior change sort of design thinking, implementation and monitoring into those kinds of projects as well. So I'm sorry that Sarah couldn't be here, but I'm happy to be able to be here in her place. So I'm going to be talking about a project in Tigray, Ethiopia called the Studying Animal Food Markets in Rural Areas, or SAFIRA project. The partners on this project are John Snow, IFPRI, and the Manoff Group, and a research institution in Addis Ababa as well, affiliated with the University of Addis Ababa. This project was funded by a broad agency agreement, which is a mechanism, a USAID mechanism that allows for flexibility in design. And so we had the luxury of this project of doing multiple rounds of formative research, and in order to design our intervention for the project. And the central, we're looking at whether we can use SBC approaches to maximize the role that marketplaces, as in a physical marketplace where people gather, can play to support improved nutrition, especially in the first 1,000 days. So the research question we are looking at, using this mixed methods that Sarah talked more about in the presentation, is can market-centered interventions, including SBC interventions happening in marketplaces, successfully increase the intake of animal source foods in children 6 to 23 months in Tigray, Ethiopia. So what we found was that it was an interesting and collaborative process to work with IFPRI, who is much more known for quantitative surveys and economic analysis and things like that. The Manoff Group, who is much more known for qualitative formative research to design social and behavior change, and JSI, which does some of both and is also well known for sort of information management, knowledge management. So it was an interesting process working across our sectors and methodologies we were familiar with to develop this mixed methods approach. It allowed us to learn about marketplace interactions, as well as things like prices, supply and demand of animal source foods, the infrastructure in the market, and environmental health issues within the marketplace, barriers and enablers faced by egg traders, and also the consumers of animal source foods. So the mixed methods allowed us to look at this picture of increasing access to animal source foods in Tigray by kids 0 to 23 months from a lot of different perspectives. And so we'll share, the presentation shares a little bit about the findings and then some questions that we still have, which we're hoping to answer in another round of formative research. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, so in the slides, there are more informations about how you did the market surveys in the 2 steps and how you also make use of the trials for improved practices. So I hope we can discuss more on the QA sessions. So please, everyone, don't forget to post any questions or comments addressed to Laura and Ashley. Before we go to the QA sessions, Gabriela will instead be sharing the video of her presentations. I think, Lauren, you help.
I think she's going to, her slides will be shared by Ed Joy, who worked with her on this.
Okay.
And we'll
Okay,
try to
so
use her audio.
Okay, that would be great. So if you can share the slides, the team here Ed Choi will be presenting on behalf of Gabriela. That is excellent. So please, Ed.
Thanks, Umi. I have shared the slides and Gabriela is going to talk to these. Can everyone see the slides? Umi, can you see them?
Yes.
Yeah. So Gabriela, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Gabriela. I'll be presenting on intensive sensitization, a key to successful community-based research, lessons from an agriculture to nutrition trial in rural Malawi. The community-based trial provides valuable evidence to assess the effectiveness of agriculture to nutrition intervention. The addressing hidden hunger with agronomy trial was conducted in rural Kasungu district in Malawi from July to September 2019. In this community-based randomized control trial, participants received selenium biofortified or control maize flour for 8 weeks. Blood samples were collected at baseline and endline. In this study, the challenges faced in trial implementation were considered. Basically, the issue was about gaining the trust of participants and the wider community, the importance of formative research and adoption of enhanced community sensitization approaches for successful completion of the trial. Success implementation of the AHA trial required the willing support of the participants and the wider community. Hence, we identified the risks, which included possibility of selling or sharing assigned flour, declining to participate due to fear of providing blood samples. Formative research was used to conduct was conducted 1 year before the baseline survey using quantitative and qualitative methods. Next. Survey participants typically ate all their previous day's meal at home. Thus, it was considered feasible to randomize allocation to treatment at household level, provided participants understood trial flour should be eaten at home. The concerns that were raised during focus group discussions and the key informant interview included the fact that biofortified flour might affect fertility and blood sampling might be linked to witchcraft, and participants might be subject to social stigma if community members considered them lazy for receiving free flour. Hence, community dialogue was the proposed mitigation strategy of the concerns. So the formative research findings guided key implementation decisions, including the adoption of an enhanced community sensitization approach, which included the district officials' village gathering and visits to Rwanda, where maize production and milling was done, and then there was a community dish sharing. In conclusion, 96% of the participants completed the trial. As such, these figures suggest that community sensitization was successful, and community sensitization guided by formative research is an essential component of successful delivery of community-based trials because it provides an opportunity to hear and answer community members' fears and concerns, as well as it ensures that participants and the surrounding communities are fully aware of the activities and their purposes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriela, for the nice presentations about the sensitizations for the intervention of the with the selenium supplementations. And okay, thank you all the three presenters for sharing your brief studies. And now I would like to start the Q&A sessions. I will start based on the questions from the audience. The first one is addressed to Ashley for the Safira egg interventions. It is from Joe Yates. How did formative research in your study inform the barriers with regards to price and affordability, since this is often the biggest or most important barrier to consuming eggs? Ashley?
Yes, Thanks for your question. Yes, and I apologize I didn't run through the slides in my summary. I didn't understand that was the format. So I hope everyone does watch the recorded presentation that Sarah has done. So we actually did 2 rounds of formative research. In the first round, we gathered, there's already quite a bit of existing qualitative and quantitative market analysis kind of data around animal source foods for children in Ethiopia, including in Tigray, where we are implementing. And so in that first round, we looked at things like price, availability, accessibility, but also acceptability, because as many of you probably know, there are many fasting days in the Orthodox calendar in Ethiopia, so Orthodox Christians there are not meant to eat animal source foods during fasting on fasting days. Children up to age 7 are actually excluded from this, but there's a lot of peer pressure from neighbors and things for households not to purchase or prepare animal source foods on those days. So that means kids also don't eat animal source foods. So the first round of formative research, we looked at what really were the barriers operating in our implementing area, and also built on experience that Alive and Thrive has had with around eggs. And we found that compared to other animal source foods, the market for eggs was more developed in the area of Tigray where we're operating, and eggs are the most affordable and the most available animal source food. And so we went with eggs for our second round of formative research. In the second formative round, round of formative research, we found that price was mentioned by traders and consumers, but really the issue is much more around mechanisms for procuring eggs for households that have small children, whether producers of eggs sell or consume their eggs, the fact that big towns like Mekelle are pulling all the eggs to them for better prices for hotel consumption and things like that, and this issue around fasting. So those were really the big barriers that we found, but we also found that traders and consumers are very willing to try new things, especially if they are going to help strengthen like the shelf life and attractiveness of eggs on the part of the traders. And if neighbors are going to approve, if they feel that neighbors and religious leaders are going to approve of them feeding eggs to their kids even on fasting days. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Ashley. So it seems like the price is not the most difficult challenge, but more about the acceptability, because I think in some of our linear programming studies also, eggs often is quite accessible, cheap protein source of animal protein. So we continue with the questions. I think it is addressed to Laura. There is a question from Gun Benjaminson. The question is whether if a diet is very healthy but not very environmentally friendly, how do this trade-off work in the scoring? So I think this is a good opportunity for Laura to elaborate more on the scoring of your WIS. Please, Laura.
Yeah. Well, of course, it's a very fair point. You would expect that the scoring would, well, hang around the middle, so to say. So you would actually get an average scoring. But this is also why we have the subscores. So you have the components which are scored based on, the scoring is made on the healthiness and the environmental friendliness of that component, of that food group. And in the subscores, we have the environmental, the high environmental impacts. So we have actually grouped all the food groups in that subscore, which are, environmental, have a high impact on the environment. So the idea is, and that's still, what we're working on in our evaluation, the idea is that you can use these subscores to say, okay, this is a very healthy diet, but this person also has a very environmental unfriendly diet. Yeah, although you see that it's a rather average score on the total, these subscores give that information on the environmental friendliness versus the healthiness of the diet. I hope that's answering your question.
Thank you, Laura. You had the nice table and pictures in your video. I think it is about how you combine the three the categories of each sustainability and the health, and come out with some which are, I think, healthy but environmentally less. So they are. It's like a combination of good and good. I think it is for fruit and vegetables. Is that correct? Also nuts, and then you have also the one that is like red meats and the poultry, which is healthy but less environmentally sustainable. And
Yes.
I think the details in the video shows that with those three categories at final adequate, the higher the intake, the higher the scores, the WIS scores. For you also have moderate, it is good to consume in moderation, and you also have optimal, which means like red meats and also poultry. It is better to limit the intake, right? Because the higher the intake, the lower the score. I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, Laura. So, thank you. And we have now a question addressed to Gabriela from Heike Rolk. Gabriela, what is in your experience essentials in approaches to gain trust from the participants? How do you ensure the approach is appropriate to the context?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Gabriela.
Can you, yeah, ensuring that the approach is appropriate to the participants. Yeah,
Yes.
basically the community sensitization, we felt the approach was appropriate because basically we involved all the people at different levels, and we had the opportunity to discuss with the senior officials from government and even from the community level, and then the entire village members. And in the villages, it was an open discussion with all the villagers. So in each village that we entered, we had to have a discussion with the people, male, female, all the adults were welcome. And then they were free to ask questions, and as many questions as they wanted at each and every level. Before baseline, we did that. Before listing the households, we did that, and they explained the purpose of the trial, and then we felt the approach was really appropriate, because at the end of the day, by the time we are doing the sensitization towards the end of the exercise, people really have the few questions and we are satisfied with the approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. Please stay with us. There is another question for you from Martin Bradley. It is asking about your participants of the formative activities, because after involved in the formative activities, they would not be able to participate in the main study. So how do they accept this? Are they frustrated by not taking part in the main study? And will you report back the findings of the main study to those taking part in the formative component?
Thank you. The time we are conducting the formative research, we clearly highlighted the fact that if the community to which we conducted the formative research was randomly sampled, and we practiced random sampling with them by also randomly sampling the participants of the formative research. And we highlighted the fact that during the actual exercise whereby the trial will be conducted, we will also randomly sample the villages within the catchment area, because where we did the formative research is the same extension planning area where the agriculture, I mean, that's the way the agriculture sector is demarcated in this, I mean, in Malawi. So it was in the same extension planning area, but it was in a different traditional authority. So we explained to them clearly. So sharing with them the findings, for sure it will be very easy to share with them, because we highlighted that Kasungu was sampled for this activity. Therefore, any village can be sampled for the actual household trials. Yeah.
Thank you, Gabriela. So the next questions are addressed to all three presenters from Sunita Kadiala. Thank you, Sunita. The first one for Gabriela again. You identified the fear of satanism related to the blood collections, yeah, in your study for the selenium status. You found it during the formative work. How did you respond to this? And is this a useful lesson for example, vaccination program or similar things? Maybe you can.
Hello, yes.
Gabriela?
Okay, yeah, the issue of satanism or witchcraft, the time we were conducting the formative research in Malawi, there was a rumor that was going through whereby they were like discussing about blood suckers and people were living in fear, and it was all over in media. People were even being killed for being suspected to be blood suckers, something like that. So when we were conducting the formative study, when we highlighted the fact that we'll be sampling blood from the people, then that issue of witchcraft, satanism came out. But our response was that we are not going to do anything in secret. The health personnel will be used, and the blood sampling will be done at maybe a school or wherever, whether there's a clinic nearby, but it will be at a place whereby everybody will know that this is happening at this place. And the fact that all the government officials were aware of the study, that also motivated the people to participate, and there was no fear as regards to any, suspecting any kind of evil associated with the blood sampling. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. I think giving a clear explanation to the subjects and then also involving the local authorities is the key, yeah? And
yes.
Getting the right settings. So next question from Sunita to Laura. Laura, could you please clarify if the one that you use in the development of the WIS index is a population level indicator or individual level? So is it the population level? Sunita thinks but she's wondering whether it is applicable index at the individual level.
Now you're right that we use individual dietary intake data for, well, scoring, scoring. But we actually, we intended to use it at the population level. We, for example, for policymakers or for food system researchers, so they have an idea of how healthy and how sustainable the diet is in that particular country or in that particular area. So yeah, using individual data, this index intends to say something on the population level.
Okay. Yes, so that can also help for example, like giving directions about the productions of the food, for example. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. It's part of a larger food system project, the A4NH project, and yeah, in this context, in this food system context, we intend to see the entry indeed in where should we actually focus on changing, making changes.
Interesting question from Sunita, because like, for example, we have a dietary inflammatory index, for example, which can be also used to assess individuals' risks to pro-inflammatory diet. I think it is potential also maybe and just to see if this is that you can. So basically, your idea is to assess the population general diet, yeah. But yeah,
Yes,
this
that's
is
what it.
also possible to see if my diet or your diet is what is in the WIS scoring. Yeah. Okay, Laura. Next question from Sunita to Ashley about regarding the results. What is your next steps, Ashley? How are you going to use this to design the interventions?
Yes, thank you for the question, Sunita. Is it okay if I sort of tackle this question and Sylvia's question? I think they're pretty closely related. Looking at
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so and the next one is also addressed to you, Ashley, about the enabling factors that allowed you to do the 3 rounds of the formative research before you started the trial, and how your findings changed the trial structure and how flexible is the trial design. Yeah, I think you can.
Okay, so those are both really good questions. Again, this being a broad agency agreement, it does give more flexibility to adapting the intervention design. And we are adapting the intervention design, but also planning a 3rd round of formative research. Because essentially what we found is that even though the egg market is more developed and more formalized than either milk or any kind of meat, either live animal or butchered meat, it kind of goes in one direction now, where producers just bring it to marketplaces, where the idea was that we would do social and behavior change interventions with vendors and consumers in rural marketplaces, about 20 marketplaces for intervention and 20 for control. So what we found is that producers take the eggs to the market, and then the egg folks who are at markets who we thought were selling to household consumers and to buyers that are then taking them to bigger towns and cities. In our first market observation, that's what looked like what was happening. But what we really found out is that households actually purchase eggs on the way to markets. If they're going to markets for something else, they see someone who's bringing eggs to these middlemen, these traders, and they buy markets. Either that or they eat what they produce, which we also know. So we actually found out that all the vendors in the marketplace are basically selling to middlemen to take further up to take up where they can get a price for them in bigger towns and cities. So that has changed what we want to do with our intervention significantly, in that, we had intended to do social marketing and product placements and sort of point of sale promotions with egg vendors in marketplaces to attract consumers. That is not probably going to be an option, given that the vendors are selling on to cities in the marketplaces. So what we're doing for the 3rd round of formative research is actually a participatory mapping of these more informal value chains, understanding better why do producers sell versus consume, and how do who are the households that are purchasing eggs now and feeding it to kids, and what goes into their decision making, and what is the mechanism they use for that. And that, we hope, will help us craft interventions that still reach consumers at the marketplaces, probably reaching men and women separately because they hang out in separate places at the markets, but also rely a little bit more on some videos and things like that, where religious leaders are talking about how it's okay to feed eggs, but also working more with producers who are interested in selling more. So it's going to be more reaching out to individual producers, and we hope to do that in partnership with a private sector group that is in Tigray called Ethio Chicken. We're still exploring ways to do that with them, because their primary business is selling hatchlings, not eggs, but the two are related. So that's kind of where we are, and USAID is very much in on the co-creation of this, because it's a BAA. So it's been an interesting partnership with USAID as well, to deal with the results of the formative research and make changes.
Okay, thank you, Ashley, for the explanations. So this is really like the PPP partnerships are going to be. So The next question we have from June Po to Laura. This is more into your scoring of Laura. Could you please elaborate about the dietary pattern, how it culturally determined it is, and whether the red meat category group as ruminant and non-ruminant animal source food, how do you think this categorization might impact given their difference in among others environmental implications?
Well, to start with the first one about the culturally, the culturality of the dietary pattern. This is actually, yeah, it's a general score, which we hope we can apply in different countries, in different settings, and that's that's also what I'm working on now, using different data sets from different countries, and see how well it performs in the different countries, because each country has their own unique culturally determined dietary pattern. So, is it possible to use this general index in all different countries? So that's indeed one of the questions that we are aware of, and it's very good that you're asking that. What we're working on. And the second question about red meat, the category red meat is actually a large category grouping ruminant and non-ruminant animal source meats. But also, for example, the ultra-processed meats are part of this group. So it's a very big group, and it's very good that you highlight these questions marks about the differences in environmental sustainability between these animal source foods. It will impact. There will be an impact, but that's also part of the evaluation.
Yeah, Laura, for the scoring, you also mentioned that the limitations of this development of indicator is mostly from the developed countries. Yeah, so maybe you have some views how it will be different when it is implemented in the developing countries.
Very true. Yeah, very true.
So how would you see will be different?
Well, how it will be different? Well, if you look at what is the environmental impact of a certain food, of a certain food group, because I group it here in food groups, that can be very different depending on the region. How is it produced? If you look at the whole value chain of that food item, using LCA data sets, it might be very different if you're in the north, in the south, in the east, in the west of the world. So there, I wouldn't be surprised if we see large differences. Especially there. Yeah,
so it will be more interesting to see more when it is implemented in different regions. Yeah, I look forward to that results, and thank you, Laura. For all of you, we also open. If you would like to post your questions directly, you can click on the functions for the hand raise. So any questions you would like to post directly to Gabriela, Laura, and Ashley, please, you're most welcome. While waiting, I have another question for Laura. How do you consider the cost? Because often in the index, we accommodate the cost. So in this index, you consider the health indicators, you consider the sustainability. Do you think the costing has some potential room also in this index, or how do you see that?
I didn't take it into account, but correct, you're very right. It's part of the sustainability, costing, but also the culture, the social cultural aspects of the diet. And those two aspects, so the social cultural aspects of the diet and the costing, are not taken into account in scoring this WISH index. And that's, yeah, that's. But I also reading in the literature about how do you measure environment, or how do you measure the sustainability of the diet? You see that often the healthiness and the environmental aspects are considered, but cost and social cultural they are less indicators. There are less often research done on these aspects. So it's indeed, if you want to be inclusive and include all aspects of sustainability, it should be included. But in this index, it's not taken into account. It might be nice to, once we have done this evaluation, to look further into, is it possible to look into cost and maybe also these social-cultural aspects? Yeah, maybe in the next years, it would be great, yes. Yeah.
Reflection too, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So we look forward to the version 1, because I know it is also not many countries may have a good data on that. So it is also first the indicator, second is adaptations to the data availability in the country level. So if anybody would like to pose the questions orally, or maybe add from the study team members of Gabrielle, Laura, and Ashley. If no more.
Yeah, so I can ask one.
Can you please introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, yeah, I'm Laura McIntyre. Question for Gabriella.
Okay.
Did the formative research impact the follow-on strategy for control group participants? So did the formative research impact the follow-on strategy? Thank you. There's also another question in the chat box.
Yeah, we have one also question from Sylvia Lefay to I think all panels who would like to comment on the aspect of environmental indicators. What aspects do you think of the environmental indicators should be included? For example, maybe water footprint or plastics. Any one of you would like to share your opinion? Especially maybe Laura and also others.
Yes. Well, there were actually 5 environmental indicators included. So greenhouse gas emission, land use, eutrophication, acidification, and scarcity weight water. So it's actually the same indicators that the Eat Lancet committee used. That I also took into account here in this scoring of this index.
So water is into the indicator. How about the plastic, for example, Laura?
No, not. No,
yet, yeah, it is.
No.
Yeah, it is emerging now, and yeah, it is also. I believe it can further develop the more issues on environment and indicators are available. Yeah, thank you for the question, Sylvia. We have another question for Ashley about. This is from Heike Rock. She's curious to know what kind of BCC theory use in your research, Ashley.
Thanks for that question. That is an excellent question, and I think we all should be asking it all the time. There are 3 main kind of theories that we use to guide the development of the formative research, and also our theory of change that we're adapting as we get our findings. The first one is the COMBI model, which is developed by Michi and others at London School. And it means that someone will do a behavior if they have the capability, the opportunity, and the motivation. You need to have all 3 elements in place for someone to do a behavior. So that's the COMBI model. The other one is one I'm sure most of you are familiar with, the socio-ecological model, which just simply states that individuals act in the context of their families, of their neighbors, of their communities, of their physical environment, of the resources they have available, of the goods and services available either in the market or the public sector people, and more broadly by the broader culture and economy and political situation. So that's the second theory. When it gets down to different priority groups, so we're looking at, both mothers and fathers make purchases at markets. And so we're interested also in engaging religious leaders, as I stated before. So when we're doing more of a sort of audience analysis, we're also using the stages of change theory to see like where are these different groups in terms of thinking about nutrition and animal source foods, and especially eggs for kids 0 to 23 months, especially in relation to the fasting issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Please stay tuned. You have another question from Edward about the involvement. How closely are you working with the local research expertise, especially in designing and conducting your qualitative work, the local research expertise?
That's a great question. We are lucky to have a strong local research partner called ASRIA, and it's a research firm, again, that's associated with the University of Addis Ababa. And also the folks we're working with at IFPRI have done a lot of market systems analysis in Ethiopia, in Tigray, and particularly looking more and more at animal source foods. So including local researchers. So yeah, it was very important to even to kind of make sure we were finding all the information we could in the initial situational analysis and secondary data review. They pointed us to good resources, to good key actors in the market system that we needed to talk with. So that really helped us formulate the questions that we wanted to answer in the formative research, and then tailor the methods to the context, and identify, skilled enumerators. We know how important that is. And then ASRIA processed the data, did the preliminary analysis of the data, and then we all as a group worked together on the analysis and interpretation of findings. So yeah, local researchers have been a very key part of this all the way.
Thank you, Ashley. I think we all agree it is very important for the local expertise to inform our studies. So I think we have a great and interactive discussion. Thank you all the presenters and also all the questions for your very great questions. And thank you for joining the sessions. I enjoy the sessions. I enjoy also the information that you shared, Gabrielle, Laura, and Ashley, and have a good day, good afternoon, and good night, everyone. And back to you, Laura.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Just going to end the meeting now. Thank you. Bye.